Okay, we are picking up on Yud Ches Amud Aleph. We are in A at the 18A at the very bottom. We are starting with Tan Rabbanan. So Gemara says Tan Rabbanan Kara Sirugin. If someone reads the Megillah and he's not doing it, he starts and stops when he's doing it. Yatsa, that's fine. That's not a problem. Turning now to Yud Ches Amud Beis. Sirusin lo yatsa. But if someone reads the Megillah, as we said before, if someone's reading it out of order, then you're not going to be able to fulfill your chiyuv to listen to Megillah. Rav Muna Amar Mishum Rav Yehuda Afis Rugen, that even if you're reading it and you're starting and stopping, but there's a limit to how much you can do it. Imshah Kedei Ligmar Askula Chozel Ros. If let's say you stopped reading it long enough that you could have finished the Megillah, then you have to go back to the very beginning of the Megillah to start reading again. Now the Gemara is going to explain what that means. Amar Rabbi Yosef. Well, first, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, that if you pause long enough that you could have finished the whole Megillah in the time that you stopped it, then you have to go back and you have to start reading it again from the beginning. Amalei Abai Rabbi Yosef. So Abai asked Rabbi Yosef, "Kedei ligmar eskula." What does that mean? Mehecha dekai l'seifa or dimam reish l'seifa? Does it mean? Let's say you're 5 psukim from the end of the Megillah. So does that mean that in the time it would take you to finish reading 5 psukim until the end of the Megillah, that's when you'd be able to, that's the amount of time that you have? Or is it, is it a minute? Is it 5 minutes? How long is it supposed to be? It's from the amount of time it would take you to read the Megillah from beginning to end. Let's say on average that's 35 to 40 minutes to read the Megillah. So 35 to 40 minutes is how long you could take a pause. And if you pause longer than that, then you have to go back. Because if you don't do that, then every single person is going to have a different shear for how long of a pause they could take. Because if someone's 10 psukim in, then they would have the amount of, from 10 psukim to the end. If someone was halfway through, they would halfway through to the end. So therefore they said the amount of time it reads to go from beginning to 10. I don't know what that is in terms of a time number. Again, I don't know if they just take an average, if that's 35 minutes, let's say, or hopefully like 25 minutes, you're in a good place. So I don't know how long it is, but anyway, so that's what they said. So now the Gemara is just going to explain, the next few lines are just explaining who said that what the halacha is, but they're going to say different people who said in the same names. The halacha is like Rav Muna that says that you have to, that if you stop long enough to finish it, then you have to start over. Shmuel Amar, Ein halacha Rav Muna, it's not like him. Besura Masnu Hachi, but Pantisam Masnu Hachi, that what does it mean? Amar Rav Kahana, Amar Rav, halacha Rav Muna, Ein halacha Shmuel Amar, Ein halacha Rav Muna. Shmuel says halacha is not like Rav Muna. Rav Bibi Masi Ibcha, Rav Amar, Ein halacha Rav Muna, and Shmuel Amar halacha Rav Muna, and that's the key that we have to learn here, that Shmuel says the halacha is not like Rav Muna, because now the Gemara is going to explain what does that mean. Amar Rav Yosef, the Kotra Rav Bibi Biadecha, that go like Rav Bibi, who says that the Shmuel who the Charish Lechidai, that Shmuel is the one that was worried about the opinion of a minority. Meaning, if one person says something, Shmuel would tend to give a lot of weight to what that person said. And therefore he's going to hold like Rav Muna from Rabbi Yehuda that says that when you stop reading the Megillah long enough to finish the whole thing, you have to start over again. Because where do we see that Shmuel is worried about the opinion of a minority when against the majority? It says because we learned in a Bryce, we learned in a Mishnah, the Tanan. Shomeres Yom Shekidish Achav as Achos. If you have a Shomeres Yavam, so a Yavam is someone, let's say you have a person who's married to a woman and he dies without any children. So the halacha is that the brothers of the deceased are supposed to perform either Yibam or Chalitza on the woman. Yibam means that they take her in marriage and they have children through her, and that's the way that they're able to carry on their brother's name. Or they do chalitza, which is a process where she removes his shoe and she spits, and that's the way that they undo it. When the brother is waiting to marry this woman, it's called he has a zika to her, he has a bond to her. There's a bond that he has to perform yibum. So there's machlokes where if you have multiple brothers, do you say that they all have a bond with that woman, and the halach is that the oldest one is supposed to perform yibum first. If he doesn't want to, then the second does, and the third, etc., etc. Or do you say that there is a bond that one of them has to perform yibum on this woman, but it's not that the bond is on all of them? Where does this come up? Let's say Reuben died; he doesn't have any children, so his wife is now one of the brothers is supposed to marry. There's Shimon and Levi. So Levi, who is supposed to let his brother Shimon go first if he wants to perform yibum on his brother's wife. So let's say Levi got engaged to another sister of the deceased, to the sister of the woman that's waiting to get yibum. So the question is he able to marry her or not? Like there's kiddushin. So the question is, does he have a zika? Does he have this connection, this bond, and he has to wait until Yibum is performed on the woman, or because there's another brother, we say that he does not have to wait and he can go ahead and he can marry this other sister right now. So Shemaras Yavim Shekina Shachav as Achos. If you have a woman that was waiting for her Yavim, she was waiting for the brother to come to perform Yibum on her, and then the other brother, Levi, he got engaged to the sister. So Mishum Rabbi Yehuda and Beseira Amrum Lo Hamtin Ad Shiasa Achicha Agadol. You have to wait until your brother does an action, meaning he has to do either Yibum or Chalitza. And then you're able to go ahead and you're able to consummate the marriage that you have with this woman. Amar Shmuel, Halach Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, and Shmuel, who we just said before, says Allah is like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, who's a minority opinion, but he's not afraid to go out on a limb and hold like the minority. So that's why the Gemara brought this down. So therefore, the same thing we help with that hold like Shmuel, who said from Rav Muna Bar Yehuda, that when a person stops laning long enough that they could have finished the entire Megillah, and again, it can happen. You're in the middle of hearing the Megillah, you get called out for an emergency. You're a Hatzalah member, okay, and you get called out on a call, and you have to leave. So if you're gone long enough that by the time you come back, they would have finished the whole thing, you have to start over from the beginning. Tana Rabbanan. Hishmit ba Sofer Osios Psukim. Let's say that the Sofer was writing the letters and he left out either a couple of letters or he left out a couple of Psukim from the Megillah. Ukarna Kari Kamaturgam and Hamatargim. And then the person who was reading the Megillah, he was well versed in it. And if any of you know how to lane, like I know how to lane my Bar Mitzvah Parsha. I can do my Bar Mitzvah Parsha pretty much by heart. Like I know what the next words are going to be. I look in the Torah when I'm doing it, but I know what the next words are going to be when I'm laning. So let's say this guy is reading the Megillah. He really knows the whole thing by heart, but he reads it because he knows you're supposed to read it inside. So let's say he's reading the Megillah and it's missing letters or it's missing words or some psukim. So he says, and instead he keeps going like he just know, like a maturgama, like the person who would used to translate when they would have a drasha that was going on, or what the Torah reading was, they would have a maturgama who would translate it. So this guy who's laning, he's able to do it by heart. So if he does that, yatsa, you fulfill the obligation of reading the Megillah. Mason, I'll ask you a question on that. It says, Hayuba osios metushtashos or mekaros. If you had letters that were either partially rubbed out or they were torn, in Rishuma Nikar Kasher, if you still have the outline of the letters, then you're still able to read the Megillah and it's going to be kosher. V'imla Psulin, if not, it's puzzle. So that contradicts what we just said. We just said before that if it's missing some letters or psukim, that the person is able to do it by heart, and you're still able to read it, and it's kosher. And here we say that if you still have the roshim, if you still have the outline of the letters, then you're able to read, then it's going to be kosher, but if not, you're not able to. My answer is lokash, it's not a question. Habakula, habamixasa. When do we say that it's going to be possible? That's if the whole thing is rubbed out or it's blurry, like the whole Megillah was just in shambles. Then that's going to be possible. But if most of the Megillah was okay, then that's not a problem if you have a couple of letters missing or a couple of psukim. Tana Rabbanan. Hishmit ba hakore pasuk echad. If let's say the person who was reading the Megillah left, he skipped a line, and he ends up leaving out one line of the Megillah. So lo yomar ekra eskula v'achar kein ekra osa pasuk. You shouldn't say that I'm going to finish reading the Megillah till the end, and then I'll go back and I'll just read this pasuk. Elakari ba'osa pasuk ve'elach. You have to go back and read from the pasuk where you skipped, and then finish the end of the Megillah. Nechnas beis hakneses umatzat tzibur shekaru chatzia. Let's say you walked into shul, and again you thought Megillah laning was starting at 8, and you walk in, and they started at 10 to 8. So you walk in and they already started reading. So lo yomar ekra chatzi matzibor v'achakach ekra chatzi. You shouldn't say that I'm going to read. I'll finish the first half with. And again, we're talking about the person who has a cloth. He has his own Megillah, so he could read it along with it. So you shouldn't say I'm going to do the second half now with whoever's laying in the Megillah, and then when he's done, I'm going to read the first half. I'll finish it up by myself. You shouldn't do that. You have to read it from the beginning to the end. You can't start again because the whole concept is you cannot read the Megillah out of order. Then the Mishnah said that if a person was dozing, he's still able to fulfill the mitzvah that he has of listening to Megillah. So this is a famous Gemara. We've had in many places. Heichidam misnamin. What does it mean that someone was misnamin? What does that mean? Amar Ravashi, nim v'lo nim, tir v'lo tir. That he's asleep, but he's not asleep. He's awake, but he's not awake. The karoleva ani v'lo yada l'adrei svara. That if you call him, he's able to answer, but he's not able to give you any in-depth answers to do it. And then when they remind him of something later on, he remembers it. So guy's dozing off, and then in the middle you say, "Hey, Ellie," and he goes, "Oh, what's going?" If I ask you where the keys are, so you're not going to be able to tell me what room the keys are in. But if I say, "Hey, are the keys in the kitchen?" You go, "Yeah, they're in the kitchen." Like you can't think, but you're able to just answer responsively. So that's what it means. If you're dozing, that's going to be good enough to listen to the Megillah. The Mishnah then says if the person was writing the Megillah, he was giving a drush on it, or he was correcting it. So if he had in mind to be Mekayim, mitzvah, listening to Megillah, he's Yotzei. So Hechidami, what is the case talking about that this person was working on the Megillah? Either Kamisar Psuka, if we're talking about that he was doing it by memory, that he was remembering, the first pasuk, he knew it by heart, and then he writes it down as he's doing it. Because of law, my hobby. What good is it to do if he had in mind to be Yotze the Chiyuv of listening to Megillah? Al Pahu, that's still considered doing it from memory because it was not written down when he was doing it. Ella the cause of psuka the karila. So it must be then that you're talking about that he would write one pasuk at a time, and then he would read that pasuk, and that's how he was reading the Megillah. So Gemara says that's still not good. Umiyatza would he fulfill his obligation to read the Megillah? That the halacha is that you have to read that you have to read the entire Megillah, because we're going to get to the Mishnah on Monday is going to say how much of the Megillah do you have to read in order to be Yotze your Chiyuv. So even according to Vafilu Manda Amar Ishihudi, because there's one mandam that says that you only have to start from Ishihudi, which is one parak in, that's where you start reading the Megillah, but still, Tzricha should take Suva Kulov, but everyone agrees that the Megillah has to be written from Vayhivi Me'achashverosh all the way to the end. It's just an argument, where do you have to start reading the Megillah to fulfill your obligation? But you definitely have to have the whole Sefer written in front of you. So this person, what was he doing when he was correcting the Megillah? If you're saying that he's writing it by pasuk at a time, he doesn't have a whole Megillah in front of him when he was reading it, so that's not going to be any good. So my answer is, El Demancha Megillah Kamei, V'Kakari Le'Minda Psuka because of law. It's talking about that he had two Megillahs. He had one that he was writing, and he had another one that was already done. So he was looking at the one that was already done, and he was using that as his guide to write the Megillah. So as he's reading in the one that's already done, if he has in mind while he's doing that, and then he's writing the pasuk, even though it's like he's interrupting after every pasuk to go write the pasuk down in the new Megillah, that's still going to be good. He's going to fulfill his obligation to read the Megillah. So Gemara says, "Leim Messiah Leil Rabbi Bar Chana, the Amar Rabbi Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, As Lichtov Osachas Shalom and Aksav," that you're not able to write even one letter of the Torah without having another Sefer open in front of you. So you're not able to write a Torah or a Sefer by heart without having another one open in front of you to use it as a guide. The Ilma Esrumi, because we're afraid. I'm sorry. So Gemara says that. So you have a raya then, because we said that to what he's just saying now, you have a raya because we said that you're not able to write it. You have to have another one open in front of you. So you see that you're not able to write one. You're not able to write a sefer unless you have one open in front of you. That brings a raya to what Rabbi Bar Chana was just saying, that you can't write a Torah Shabbat Peh without having another one next to you. I'm sorry, Torah Shabbat. Thank you very much. My answer is Dilma Dishrami Leitrume. No, we're just talking about that he happened to have one in front of him when he was writing it, but it doesn't mean that he had to have one when he was writing it. So therefore, he can't bring a proof from there. Gufa. So we're going to ask you another question. Amar Rabbi Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. You're not able to write one, as we said. You're not able to write Torah Shabbat without having another one open in front of you. Meisvei. Amar Rav Shimon ben Elazar. Maisa b'Reb Meir. Shahalach la'aber shana ba'Asya. Meir went to the city of Asya to be ma'aber to make the extra month. And they do that in Adar. Lo hayasham Megillah. He didn't have a Megillah, so what did he do? Ukasva meliba okara. So he wrote one down, but he knew it by heart. He wrote the Megillah by heart, and then he read it. So you see that you are able to read it. You don't have to have another Megillah in front of you when you're writing it, because he went to Asya and he wrote the Megillah Baal Peh, and he didn't have another one next to him. So you see that you are able to write a Megillah even though you don't have another one next to it. Amar Bavo, no, Shani Reb Meir. Reb Meir was different. He was on a different playing field. The Mekayim Bey, because there's a pasuk that they said about him, that your eyes are going to be looking straight in front of you. And what does that mean? Amar Le Rami Bar Chama, Rav Yirmi Midifti, Mai va'apecha yashiru negdecha. What does that mean? Amar Lo, Elu Divrei Torah. These are the words of Torah. D'chsibuhu hasoif enechabo v'enenu, that you're going to close your eyes and it's going to be gone. Va'afilu hachim yusharn hein eitz Reb Meir. But for Reb Meir, his eyes were always considered open when it came to Torah. So even though he didn't have a Megillah with him, Reb Meir was an exception, because when he was looking straight ahead, he saw the Torah in front of him. That's how much of a Talmid Chacham he was. So I'm going to ask a question on that. Rav Chizda Ashkel Rav Chananel to have a cost of Svarim Shalom and Aksav. Rav Chizda found Rav Chananel that was writing Svarim that was not. He didn't have another text next to him when he was writing it. Amar Lei, and he said to him, Ruya Kol Torah Kula L'Kos of Al Picha. Really, the whole Torah. It's fitting that you could write the whole Torah because you're big enough of a Talmid Chacham that you could write the whole thing by heart. Ela Kacham Chachamim Asur Lichtav Osacha Shalom and Aksav. But the Chacham said you're not able to write a Torah unless you have another one next to you that's going to be used as your guide. So therefore, Amar Kala Torah Kula Ruya Shit Kasav Al Picha. Since he said that you are so great, Rav Chananel, that you could write the whole Torah, and still he said Mechlad Misharin Hey Netzlo. So it seems that the words were also for him when he would open it, when he would close his eyes. He still saw the Torah in front of him, just like Rameir did. And still we said. And still he said you're not able to write it by heart because they said you have to write it min aksav. For Rameir Kasa, but Rameir did do it. So how could you say how could Rameir do it if Rav Chananel was told that he's not able to do it? So our answer is Shas and Chak Shani. They didn't have any option. We said that Rameir went down to Asya to be Mekadosh Chodesh. It was Purim. What was he supposed to do? You're right. Normally you're supposed to write it from another sefer. He didn't have another sefer to write it with, so therefore he had to do it Bal Peh. But normally you're only able to do it if you have another sefer with you. Abai Lidvei Bar Chavu Lemichtav Tefillin and Mezuzah Shalom and Aksav. Abai would let the people from the house of Bar Chavu, and Rashi says that they were sofrim. So he would let them write mezuzahs and tefillin even by heart without having another ksav. Next to it, come on, who does that follow? Ki hai Tana. The Tani Reb Meir B'Yomer Mishum Rabbeinu. Tefillin and mezuzahs nechtavo shalom and ksav. You could write tefillin and mezuzahs by heart. Ve'en tzricha shirtut. They don't have to have. As we learned that a Torah has to have etched lines in it, but the tefillin and the mezuzahs do not have to have the etched lines in it. I'm sorry. The Hilchasa tefillin ain't tzrichan shirtut. That tefillin do not need to have the etched lines. Mezuzahs tzrichan shirtut, but the tefillin mezuzahs do need to have the etched lines. And aidi va'aidi nechtavo shalom and aksav. Both of them can be written by heart. My time migras kirsina, because everyone is very familiar because it's a famous psukim of Shema v'hayim shemoah. So everyone's very familiar with the parshios. So therefore you're able to write those by heart. We're not afraid that you're going to make a mistake with it. Okay, we will stop here and pick up on Monday.